long ago, in the time when the moon still whispered secrets to the rivers, when the ancestors spoke through the rustle of the trees, and when every story carried both a shadow and a light, there lived a prince whose name was Oba. He was the son of a mighty king. His palace walls gleamed with gold dust. His chambers overflowed with silk brought from faraway lands, and his feet had never touched bare earth without sandals of the finest leather. The people said he was blessed beyond measure, handsome, strong, and destined to rule with a crown heavy with power. Yet those who looked into Oba's eyes saw something else. They saw emptiness, for though his hands were filled with riches, his heart remained hollow. The truth is this: wealth can buy cattle, it can build palaces, it can even silence enemies, but it cannot quiet a restless soul. And Prince Oba's soul was restless. One scorching day, when the dry season had sucked the rivers thin and the earth cracked beneath the feet of farmers, Oba wandered beyond the palace gates. Disguised in plain cloth so no one would recognize him, he strolled into the village. The air was thick with dust. The smell of roasting groundnuts drifted from market stalls, and the laughter of children echoed as they chased goats through the square. It was here, by the old village well, that fate revealed itself. She was there, Adaiz. She was no princess, no noble, no woman raised on silk and perfumes. She was the daughter of a farmer. Her wrapper was plain, her hands calloused, her skin bronzed by the sun. But there was a light in her, something untamed, something raw. As she bent to draw water from the well, beads of sweat rolled down her brow, catching the sunlight like tiny diamonds. And when she laughed at the chatter of the other women, even the goats nearby paused as if listening. Oba's heart stumbled. He had seen women cloaked in gold, women whose perfume could choke the air of the palace, women taught to bow low with painted smiles, but never, never had he seen beauty woven from soil, from labor, from truth. That evening, Oba lingered by the wide palm tree near the well. He waited until Adaiz returned, balancing a clay pot on her head, her stride strong despite the heavy load. He lowered his voice, disguising it with humility. "A good evening, maiden." Adaiz stopped, her gaze cautious. Strangers were rare in the village. "Good evening," she replied, her voice calm, steady as the flow of the river. "May I help you with your pot?" Oba offered. She studied him, then gave a faint smile. "Your hands are soft. They are not made for carrying a farmer's load." Her words stung like a whip, for indeed his hands had never known labor. He glanced at them, ashamed, and whispered, "Your hands, they are rough." Adaiz lowered her pot to the ground, her eyes proud. "They are rough because they feed my family," she said. In that moment, Oba felt something stir inside him. Her honesty cut deeper than any jewel's shine, deeper than the weight of his crown. No one saw what passed in his heart that night. No one knew that the prince's soul had just bound itself to the daughter of a farmer. But what he didn't know was that the path he had chosen would soon set the entire kingdom ablaze. It began quietly, as all storms do. The palace started to murmur. Servants whispered as they fetched water. Guards traded rumors at the gates. The king's advisors spoke in hushed tones around the throne. "A prince," they said, "is never meant to wed a farmer's daughter. Can the chicken marry the hawk? Can the yams grow on the palm tree? Such a union will bring dishonor." And though these words never reached Oba's ears directly, their echo filled the corridors of the palace. But Oba's heart refused to yield. Day after day, he found ways to slip away. Sometimes he disguised himself as a traveler, sometimes as a market man carrying a calabash of palm wine. Yet always his steps carried him to Adaiz. They spoke at the edge of her father's farm, while the scent of tilled soil lingered in the air. They sat by the well as the sun bled into the horizon. Oba asked her once, "Do you not fear what people say of us?" Adaiz, her palms still dusted with yam soil, smiled gently. The mouth was made for talking, but the heart was made for feeling. "If your heart is true, why should I fear their words?" Her strength lit a fire in him. But as the proverb says, when the moon grows full, jealous clouds always gather. In the high halls of the palace lived Lady Omolara, a noblewoman promised to Oba since childhood. For years she had been told, "One day you will be queen." She had waited patiently intently, rehearsing her role in dreams, her pride swelling with each passing year. But when she saw Oba walking beside the farmer's daughter, something inside her cracked. "Her?" she hissed, golden bracelets clinking as her fists tightened. "A girl who smells of goats and soil night after night." And Lady Omolara whispered lies into the ears of the court. She said Adaiz had bewitched the prince, that she carried charms hidden beneath her wrapper, that she spoke secret words to spirits under the moon. At first, the courtiers laughed, but Omolara's words were sweet as honey and sharp as poison. Slowly, their laughter turned to doubt. Doubt turned to suspicion. Suspicion hardened into fear. By sunrise, the tale had spread like wildfire. From the throne room to the servant quarters, people asked in hushed voices, "What spell has this poor girl cast on our prince?" But her whispers were only the beginning, for soon shadows would creep into the prince's very soul. It started softly. Prince Oba grew tired. The light in his eyes dimmed. His laughter, once bright, faded into silence. He would wake in the night, gasping for air, his body drenched in sweat. And then the dreams began. Shadows haunted him. Shadows with no faces, hands that reached for him, voices that whispered Adaiz's name. He would cry out in his sleep, clutching his chest as though unseen chains bound him. The palace physicians tried every cure they knew. They brewed bitter herbs, rubbed his skin with oils, and sang chants deep into the night. But Oba only grew weaker. Rumors crawled through the palace like snakes. Some said it was the curse of a jealous rival. Others whispered that the ancestors themselves were testing the prince. And the boldest tongues claimed it was Adaiz. Adaiz, the farmer's daughter, who had bound his soul with witchcraft. The king's advisers muttered, "No man falls without reason. If fire burns without smoke, the witch is hiding nearby." Yet in the quiet of her heart, Adaiz carried a truth she had never spoken aloud. Even as she pressed cool cloths to Oba's brow, even as she whispered prayers over his fever, she knew something more. A secret bound to her bloodline, a secret her mother had warned her never to reveal, lest the heavens themselves demanded it. One evening, Oba, weak and trembling, reached for her hand. His voice was faint as a child's breath. "Adaiz, why do I dream of shadows? Why do they call your name in the dark?" Tears filled her eyes, but she turned away. "Rest, my prince, save your strength." But inside her chest, fear thundered, for the truth she carried would shake the palace to its core. At last, the day of reckoning came. The palace courtyard was filled with firelight. Villagers pressed against the gates. Chiefs lined the king's throne, their leopard skins heavy on their shoulders. Elders stood like carved wood, their white hair gleaming beneath the moon. Prince Oba lay weak upon a mat, his breath shallow, yet his eyes followed only Adaiz. The king's staff struck the ground, his voice a roar of judgment. "You have bewitched my son," he thundered. "Tell me, what magic have you used?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adaiz, barefoot and plain, stood tall. "I carry no magic but truth," she declared, her voice steady. "And truth alone frightens those who live in lies." The court erupted. Some cursed her. Others looked away in shame. Lady Omolara stepped forward, her bracelets flashing. "You hear her, my king? Allow me to show proof." With a flourish, she unfurled a cloth bundle. Out spilled charms, strings, shells, powders that smoked when they touched the ground. She held them high, her voice sharp as a knife. "Behold the tools of her witchcraft. She is no maiden. She is a serpent in disguise." Cries of outrage filled the night. The king's face hardened. "If these charges are true," he said, "let the ancestors themselves decide. Tonight, there will be a trial of truth." The elders stepped forward. Their voices rose in unison. "The spirits of our fathers do not lie. Whoever speaks with a clean heart will be shielded. Whoever speaks with a false tongue will be struck down." Oba tried to rise, but his body failed him. His hand reached toward Adaiz. Trembling, she knelt, pressed his hand to her chest, then stood and walked to the shrine. The shrine was ancient, dark stone glistening with palm oil, stained by the sacrifices of generations. The smell of smoke and blood hung in the air. Adaiz lifted her hands high, Her voice rang out, strong, unshaken. "If my love is false, let him perish," she cried. "But if my love is true, let the wicked be revealed." The air froze. The crowd held its breath. Even the stars seemed to lean closer. And then the heavens roared. Thunder cracked so fiercely it split the night sky. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Torches bent low as if bowing before the ancestors. Lady Omolara staggered, her proud face twisting. She clutched her chest, her voice breaking into a shriek. "No, no." From her robes spilled charms, cowries bound with red string, feathers blackened with ash, powders that hissed as they touched the ground. The truth laid bare. The people gasped as one. Mothers pulled children close. Elders shook their heads in sorrow. The noble woman collapsed, clawing at the ground. Her lies, her poison, her schemes exposed before all. The king trembled. His staff quaked in his hand. For all his power, even he could not deny what the ancestors had revealed. And in that moment, Oba stirred. His sickness melted like morning dew under sunlight. His chest rose strong. His eyes cleared. He stood tall and whole once more. The people shouted, some with joy, others with fear. Adais bowed her head, whispering thanks to the unseen. But even after the wicked were unmasked, the kingdom's fate still rested on one decision. The silence was heavy, every ear strained for the king's word. He looked upon his son, upon Adais, upon the trembling Omolara, disgraced at his feet. Tradition weighed on him like chains, generations of law pressed against his chest. Yet he saw the truth shining brighter than custom. Slowly, he lowered his crown. His voice rang out, deep and final. A man's worth is not in the wealth of his bride, but in the strength of her spirit. And this woman's spirit is greater than any gold I own. The drums began to beat, slowly at first, then faster, louder, until the earth itself seemed to dance. The wedding drums shook the land. Adais, once mocked as the farmer's daughter, was lifted high, wrapped in bridal colors, yet she never abandoned her roots. Even as the prince's wife, she walked the fields, greeted her people, carried water with the women, and laughed with the children. She became a queen, not only by crown, but by heart. And so the tale lived on. It was told by firesides where the flames licked the night sky. It was sung in the market, carried by travelers, remembered by children who asked, tell it again, and always the lesson burned bright. The heart is not fed by riches, but by truth. For envy may build palaces, but only love builds kingdoms.